Beamer. Are we good to go? Okay, so good morning everybody and welcome to day 2, Build Stuff 2022, and we are in the, let me check my notes correctly, the Zeta room today, where we have talks about accessibility, DDD, monoliths, data architecture, if I can speak, and just a little bit about static web apps as well. First up this morning we have Elizabeth Schneider, I hope that I did that justice, who's going to be talking to us about neurodiversity and tech allyship in tech. And she's senior cloud consultant and autism and trans activist. I don't want to take any more of your time, so please take it away.
Hello. So yes, I am Elizabeth Schneider. I'm going to go through some disclaimers real quick here. I am technically employed with Microsoft. They are a sponsor here today, but I'm here today on my own dime. They didn't assist with that, and I'm speaking my own subjects today. I'm also from the States, so some of my existence and issues that I've addressed over my career with autism and ADHD are in the context of the American medical system. If you know nothing about it, it's capitalistic and it sucks. And then while I will discuss a few things that are about my employment and working in the tech industry and some things about my current employment, they're my opinions. I'd have those opinions of any employer, not just my current one. A quick agenda. Okay, social versus medical model of disability. Most people think of disability, they think of laws or systems that are overly focused on the medical industry, solving problems for people with physical disabilities. You can't walk, we're going to give you a prosthetic leg. You're blind, I'm going to give you a cane. That kind of stuff. If you're deaf, we're going to try to give you a cochlear implant or something of that effect. Social model of disability is the concept of if we just got rid of stairs, people that have mobility issues would no longer have that as an impediment. Make everything ramps or elevators. The countless individuals that have mobility issues, walk with a cane, need a wheelchair, that kind of stuff, that disabling event of not being able to use stairs just gets removed. The social model, as we see here, is talking about the removal of systemic barriers. So you think of the society changing to help the individuals rather than the individuals conforming to society. Going back to the keynote earlier, the iconoclast sees the world differently kind of stuff. You would think of that in the social model versus the medical model. The medical model is overly focused on making sure that the individual is the one corrected or has to change, not everyone around them. Quick slide about language here. So I personally identify as being autistic, and someone with ADHD or trans, things of that nature. I'm using person, not person first language. In the United States, there was a huge movement in the late 80s and early 90s to use person first language because it made you aware that the individual you're discussing is a human. But people in the deaf community and the blind community and the autistic community for self-advocacy really didn't like that because that implied you could remove their disability from who they are. To go back to earlier talk, the idea of your perception of the world is filtered through those things. If you're deaf, your other senses have taken in for them. If you're autistic, your brain is filtering what you're seeing. You can't remove that from me. If you hear autism, you're physically changing my brain structure, so you're killing who I am. So we have some words there for that kind of stuff. Allyship is a term for somebody that is non-autistic in the autistic advocacy community. And then we try to say ASD or autism spectrum disorder now rather than other things like Asperger's. Mostly because Hans Asperger's, the guy that the disease was named for, actively worked with the Nazis during the Holocaust, so we try to give him as little credit as possible. What is neurodiversity? So it's the idea that much like hair color or eye color, it's just a state of being amongst humans. And that it's not necessarily something that you have to explicitly hide from the world, though many people feel they need to in order to fit in or other things. Again, it's strongly rooted in the social model of disability and used by, was invented as part of the autism self-advocacy community in Australia as well. So these are some of the medical conditions that you'll find in what is called the DSM-5, or Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Many countries, I believe the EU Civil Rights Commission uses this. It's written and voted on by the American Medical Association. It is the 5th text revision. This is the book that in the late 70s they finally removed being gay from. So that kind of stuff. ABA for the autism community. I'm drawing a blank on the exact, is a form of treatment. It's in the same vein as gay conversion therapy. So that all stems from the DSM, and that's part of the reason why we focus on the social model versus the medical model, because a lot of common medical treatments in the States are considered by other countries to be forms of torture. You'll see on this list something called alexithymia. A lot of people believe that autism includes this as a base component. Alexithymia is the technical term for the inability to recognize others' emotions. I apologize for all the people on the stream if I've triggered your Alexas. So a lot of people think that's an inherent trait of autism. It's actually just a co-occurring condition that happens quite a bit. It is not explicitly tied to the diagnosis of autism. But as you can see, there are countless conditions. This is not an exhaustive list. You can have any of these things or self-identify with any of these things. And I prefer self-identification versus self-diagnosed. Diagnosis has a medical connotation to it. Identification, you can identify as whatever you would like. So we feel free to be there. Again, let's talk about autism, and I'm focusing on that because that is something that I actually have myself, so I can speak to that. Autism, we don't really like to high functioning, low functioning labels. Those are extremely well used within the concepts of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is kind of spilled over into the Australian legal system as well. They have a very similar law. And I believe so does the UK, where that it's a who needs government assistance and who doesn't kind of classification system, and that gets really scary really quick as well, because again we go back to Hans Asperger's and who can be useful to the government and who cannot. And so we like to stay away from those things. We try to talk about your support needs, and I'll go into examples of why that might fluctuate different days and stuff like that. And this goes for anybody on the neurodivergent spectrum rather than just the autistics. Again, Asperger's syndrome was formally removed from the medical system within the United States in 2013. Part of the reasoning is that it's a functioning label in disguise, and the guy that it's named for did some really bad stuff during World War II. A lot of people think autistics and ADHD people can have issues with empathy. We can feel empathy, we have empathy, we quite frequently display it in a way that neurotypicals or non-neurodiverse individuals just don't perceive it as empathy. So we're in that uncanny valley situation where they know we're attempting to do something, it just makes them feel uncomfortable, so they freak out. And then don't display empathy to us, so then we get into what researchers call the double empathy problem. You want to go in a rabbit hole sometime on YouTube, go search that. Bottom of my slide has all my reference material. This is there'll be a QR code at the end for GitHub, so you can pull these slides and use those links. Most people think when you say autism spectrum disorder, they think of the right side there, not the left side. Left side is more accurate to what it really is. It's just a question of which of these areas on the chart do you fill in that day. It is not less or more, it is where on the chart are you. This particular website that this graphic is from, this is for two siblings that are experiencing similar autism, but you could think of this as Monday versus Tuesday. And reasons for that might be you went to a dinner last night in a particular facility that was extremely loud. For anybody that was at the speaker's dinner. Issues that arise in the future or things of that nature. What is your fortress of solitude? What are the things you need to do to be able to get through the day? If I'm sitting in a Teams meeting and I'm not doing something with my hands, I'm going to do it with my mouth instead, and typically I get in trouble when I do that. So I always have something in my hands. If you're in a loud space, can you put on headphones or hearing protection to protect your ears and your central processing system so that you're not causing a deficit there and can still be a participant without causing issues. What's your kryptonite? What are those things that if it's too loud, if there's too many people around, if it's too bright, the light here is kind of a little annoying for myself. I really don't like bright lights, so I actually have really fancy wraparound prescription sunglasses that I normally wear when I'm outside, because if I don't, being around the sunlight and very bright lights for a long period of time can actually cause visual migraines for myself, and that's socially draining, so I don't want to be around others. So knowing those things about yourself, this is just a fun way of framing it, allows you to know, oh, I went to that meeting today, it was 90 minutes long, and they didn't give me an agenda, so I couldn't prepare for it. So I know I'm going to be worn out in the afternoon. I'm not going to plan on trying to do the extra things that I need to get done today because it's just going to be futile to try to do so. Okay, if you're not a member of the community, how can you be an ally? And I'm kind of racing through these so that we can have time for questions and the like, so feel free if you have them to chime in. One thing to understand about being an ally is that communication is a two-way street. Quite frequently, especially in the United States and in the corporate environment, the individual that's neurodiverse, whether it's ADHD, OCD, dyslexia, any of that stuff, we're overly reliant on the medical model for everything. So the individual has to conform to the group. Instead of making the accommodation corporate-wide or to a whole team, you focus on only giving it to the individual, and therefore others see that as them getting away with something. Whereas if we did it for everyone, they could all benefit. And by understanding that communication is a two-way street, it's for everybody to meet in the middle. And it is the successful conveyance of information. And if one side is not getting it successfully, there's something that needs to change. How do you change that? Communication styles, disc profiles, I won't get into other systems because most of them have been disproven as being scientifically accurate, are a good way to give your teams and the groups that you're working with a DSL or domain-specific language about communication itself. Whether you are one of the parts of a quadrant, and you can figure those out through a test. I did one, close to a decade ago at this point in time, with a Scrum Master in a team retrospective. I think it took all of 5 minutes. She asked like 4 or 5 questions and put out traffic cones on the table in a space not much bigger than what I have here at the front of the room. And we just walked to the different quadrants that you see on the screen here based on our personal answer to those questions. And they were just really high-level questions, nothing specific. And my entire team ended up somewhere over here in this blue corner, and I was over here in this green corner. And you really quickly get the understanding that, oh, I communicate completely different than everyone else on the team. And then we were given something similar to what I have linked here at the bottom from Atlassian, that it's just a quick, here's the different communication styles, and here's how they talk or communicate well with other people and other communication styles. And then we could use those as a way of, when I'm having an issue communicating with someone or they're having an issue communicating with me, you have the language to speak about that without imparting bias or blame or things of that nature. It's just a greater communication issue, not specifically directed either at an individual or the whole team. Okay, empathy versus sympathy. A lot of people get these mixed up, especially in the States. I have linked here 2 videos from Dr. Brene Brown. If you've not seen the video that this is a screenshot from, it's not long, maybe 15 minutes. I highly recommend watching it. It's one of the 2 links there. It's an animated version of some snippets from the longer video that's the other link. It's closer to 90 minutes, but it literally digs into in depth about the difference between empathy versus sympathy. Empathy is actually feeling feelings with someone else. You may perceive them differently than the person that is you're feeling them with, but you actually have to be in the same space as that individual that you're communicating with. Sympathy is shields up. I'm going to put up a barrier between me and the other individual, try to silver line stuff typically, and protect myself from having to feel those feelings. We quite frequently do sympathy in the corporate world because they're just my colleague. They're not actually friends. They're not actually, it's to keep that professionalist distance. The problem is that many people in the neurodiverse community go to empathy inherently instantly. And so that split second gut reaction can change your situation. So that's how you have to take that and understand where in your day and where in your situation you can properly process that. Okay. How can you support your neurodiverse colleagues? I have a couple of graphics here. This article that is linked here talks about, I'm drawing a blank on the exact degree differences, but that most offices in the States are kept through air conditioning at around 69 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, for anybody that does not partake in estrogen, is damn cold. I actually worked in an office for a while. We were on the same air conditioning unit as a data center that was on the same floor. The office was regularly kept at 65 degrees Fahrenheit. If I remember right, that's like 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. All the women in the office had a coat rack at the front door that you would literally walk in the door and put on like parkas that were the same ones that one of the expeditions to Antarctica wore. And we all wore gloves, fingerless gloves, so we could type still. Yeah, that was fun. Now, if you change that to 71 degrees in an office, 71 Fahrenheit, it is slightly warmer, and productivity not only in the female colleagues and the neurodiverse colleagues, because a lot of people with autism and ADHD, especially because of stimulant medications, run a little hot, still are productive, and still are capable of getting their work done, and actually quite dramatically increase their productivity, while our male colleagues and our male presenting colleagues tend to the decrease in their productivity by being a little warmer is negligible or not really traceable. So a good read if you're in an office that's always way too cold. Focus. A lot of people on the ADHD spectrum and the autism spectrum tend to have issues with things like hyperfocus, where you get into a particular subject or something like that and go down all the rabbit holes that you can, and it's to the exclusion of everything else. Sleeping, eating, drinking for long periods of time. I have done it myself to the extent of you're working on a project or a user story, and you turn around and realize that it's now 8 o'clock the next day as your colleagues are coming in for the beginning of their shift. So it's some things that you can do to help with that is to schedule times in offices where you're not going to have meetings, so that you can give yourself and your colleagues time to do that focus work, time to actually do the user stories or whatever you guys have in your project plans or that scheduled work. The nice thing about that is that's you can partake in things like music or noise canceling headphones and stuff in those scenarios, so that you can do so. Focus also is paying attention. A lot of people in the neurodiverse community have issues with eye contact. Demanding somebody be looking at you during a meeting is kind of crazy. Now, in the post-COVID environment, it's a little less common because most of our meetings are virtual. You can just turn off your camera and not have to be there. But I still have to focus. If I were able to do so, for most meetings, I pace, which can be even virtually can be distracting to some of my colleagues. So I typically try to solve a Rubik's Cube because I can do that sitting still and muted, and so they can't hear the clicking, that kind of stuff. Or sit with spinner. A lot of people try to call these fidget toys. I prefer tools instead of toys because they are a tool in being able to focus. One of my favorite ones for focus is these. These are AirPods with the noise canceling, but also these. These are called loop earplugs. There are countless brands out there. This happens to be the ones that are here. I like them because they're almost transparent. They still allow you to hear what's going on around you, but depending on which version you have, they filter out different frequencies, so, and are really good at filtering out things like the air conditioning unit in an office or something like that, or the fan in the HVAC system, or that colleague that's got music playing from their desk. You can filter that out quite easily here, but if somebody comes up and talks to you, you can still hear. As somebody that shoots competitively in the States, I also have molded earplugs that were done by an audiologist. Creepiest thing ever to get them molded. The silicone that they use for that just feels really weird. But once you have them created, blocks out the world. You can't hear anything through those. So if you're somebody that does have audio sensory issues, highly recommend those. Meetings. A lot of people in the neurodiverse community have issues around meetings. Most autistic individuals partake in a stim referred to as scripting, where you try to plan out what other people are going to say so that you can prepare answers in advance. How would you answer it this way? If so-and-so says this, what would you say instead? So that you can be prepared to not essentially be a dick, for lack of a better way to put it. And so if somebody sends you a meeting invite and doesn't include an agenda, you don't know what you need to prepare for with that scripting. For somebody that's ADHD, you might be expected to bring something to the meeting and you've forgotten about it. The agenda is a way to know that they expect you to have that so you can be prepared for it. So agendas and meeting invites are a good thing. Please include them. Follow-up emails for meetings. This is what we talked about. This is the action items we expect individuals to complete and by when. People with ADHD have quite frequently have issues with executive dysfunction, and if my perception of time is different than your perception of time, this is a good place to level set on that. So if you had that one colleague that's never prepared for a meeting, are you creating your meetings correctly? Be detailed as possible, especially if you have a colleague that is potentially ASD. The minute details can be the thing that are tripping us up. ADHD as well, because of the executive dysfunction, the perception of how to do a task and why to do a task can be that difference between it getting done and it not getting done. I once did an exercise for school in high school where you had to list out the steps to cleaning the kitchen. Most of the students in the class had about 5 things listed on it. They were very large things like clean the stove, clean the counter, put away the dishes from the dish machine, or load the dish machine. Yes, I'm from the States. We all have dish machines in most of the houses or apartments. Yes, it's a waste of electricity. You can, mine had just under 115 steps on it. Lift this grate on this stove, clean underneath it, put it back, replace this thing, move the sponge, dry the sponge, wash the sponge, sanitize. I mean, it was just at a level of detail that no one thinks of. I have executive dysfunction issues that are currently decently medicated on Strattera, and it is a level of detail that we think of that most people don't. I quite frequently am the one person in the room that always points every story as a 13, and that's because I think of absolutely every step that has to be done, including proper unit testing in production. Yes, test in production. Avoid eye contact. I've talked about that a little bit already. I am a consultant, so I'm quite frequently on site with clients, or was pre-COVID. The social expectation in a physical meeting that you're staring at the person talking. If I have to look at you while you're talking, I'm not going to understand what you're talking about. But if I'm able to partake in the meeting without that, I can do better. I quite frequently find that a nice tablet or notebook is a way that I can look like I'm taking notes or something like that. And now I don't have to be looking at the person that's speaking and have those issues. And the Surface pens make that very nice because you can put it all in OneNote, and then you're able to share that with others if you choose to. I use it quite frequently to draw diagrams because I am such a visual person. An architectural diagram quite frequently helps me communicate successfully to others. So it's very nice about that. If you're somebody that's doing that virtually, Microsoft Whiteboard, I am recommending that because it's included in most Windows computers, not because it's my employer, is a really nice thing and is built in already and freely available at this time. So, very good thing to do. Another good, clear and direct communication. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't try to make we have to tell you something rude or something that might make someone else uncomfortable. Just say it. Rip the Band-Aid off. If it's subtle, for the most neurodivergent people, we will miss it. So again, communication is the successful conveyance of information. If you're going to try to sugarcoat it, you might not be successful. I also find that in in-person meetings, quite frequently you'll want a whiteboard taking down those action items or something like that. The neurodiverse person in the room, if there is only one, make them be the one using the whiteboard, because that allows them to move and not have that direct eye contact. They can pace around the room, or they can be writing with the marker while all this is going on. So that's a neurotypically accepted way of getting to break a bunch of the rules that neurotypicals typically have. I'm somebody that I would pace if I could, so I quite frequently prefer, for digital meetings, a wireless headset. I use a Plantronics one. that has a USB dongle for my laptops in most scenarios, because it does allow me to pace. So I can walk back and forth, or I can rock back and forth in my chair. I'm somebody that is very likely to stim using proprioceptive means. I actually have a swing chair in my office that I sit in quite frequently. That's a lot of fun. So yeah, dry erase boards are very good and great for even virtual meetings for when you have neurodiverse people on the phone calls. Again, Microsoft Whiteboard for those using Teams. I believe Zoom and WebEx have their equivalents. Use them. Okay. Now, if you're someone that is neurodiverse, or someone you need to give advice or some feedback to an individual that is neurodiverse, think of it as feedback or advice, not feedback. In the United States, when someone asks for feedback in the corporate culture, they are quite frequently meaning they want the rubber stamp, you did okay response, rather than the an actual how you could do better. Again, that's a social rule that's just kind of written into the U.S. corporate culture. If you say you're giving somebody feedback or you got feedback from your manager, they're expecting the rubber stamp, you did good. Whereas advice, and this is an article from the Harvard Business Review that talks about a scientific study that they did as part of a recent graduate thing, that if you ask for advice, they're more apt to give you real world examples of, hey, remember this time, this place, this whatever, I would have done X, Y, and Z thing differently. Here's how I would have done that. Now, the thing about that is that you have to be able to understand what's going on in that scenario. So when I quite frequently ask for that kind of stuff, I am upfront and saying, hey, I need advice here, but I'm not going to react to it today. I am somebody that if I take that feedback in the situation, I'm quite frequently going to go red alert mode, shields up, damn the torpedoes, fire the phasers at whoever's giving it to me. Even though I fully know that they're giving it to me because I've asked for it and they're trying to help me in my career, I just go into fight or flight mode and shove all my negativity that I'm feeling about this at them. So I set the boundary for myself and them to say, hey, I'm going to take every piece of information you give me today and I'm going to process that independently and then come back to you. So that way it's the third or fourth thought that I have, not the first. And for anybody that doesn't have an electrical engineering degree, that is a negative feedback loop. The other one to understand about advice versus feedback is is to understand that it is from their perception, and so it may not be actually applicable to you. So somebody might give you the recommendation of, hey, I can get stuff done or better time manage my stuff by using a planner or note cards or whatever. And if you've tried that in the past, you know it's not going to work for yourself. You can feel safe to say, hey, I've tried that, it hasn't worked for me, and leave that. Okay. And then, yeah, take that time to reflect on what advice you are getting and pull out those nuggets that you're going to find that are completely helpful. Some resources to think about. These are links to a couple of books. If you want to understand the statistics about neurodiversity and why we're not broken or less than, that last book there, We Are Not Broken, is a very good thing for that. Neurodiversity in the Workplace, or at Work, was a very good book that was actually recommended by a job coach that was provided by my employer as part of an accommodation that was given to me. And it was a very good book for my manager. So if you have a manager that's just not getting stuff, or colleagues that's just not understanding how stuff works, it frames it all in the understanding of the corporate environment. It is kind of overly focused on the United States, but you should be able to shift for that. Unmasking Autism, the context in which that book was done and the audiobook actually being read by the author was life-altering for me and covers a lot of very diverse concepts and perspectives around autism. So if you have any want for that, very much do so. The language chart that I had early on in the slides is from a modified version of what's in that book, so very good resource. And then I've rushed through this so that we can do questions or comments about your colleagues or any of that stuff, so feel free. Yes.
Hi, I am Danny, and first of all, I want to congratulate you with your talk. I'm also on the autism spectrum. I like to identify myself as a person with autism, but that's not the politics of today. I have really a concrete...
But you're fully free to do so.
I know, but but I really have a concrete question, something that I struggle at this time at my work. So I try to ask it right. Let's imagine you are responsible for a customer, and that customer contacts you via a way of contact that you really don't prefer or don't like. By example, to be concrete, I like the communication by customers via mail or via Teams, but let's say via mail, but they are always, can I use the word, stalking me via Facebook Messenger, because some customers, the relationship between being customer and also people that I know or friends, so they can be the same people that I know, so a friend role and a customer. But if they ping me via Messenger for things that I need to do, by example, an update on their website, I get frustrated.
Yep.
But customer is king, and what do I do with this?
So there's a few things that you can do about that. A very common thing that was given in the Neurodiversity at Work is to come up with a document that is the essentially the RTFM of how to work with me. Think the README of a Git repo, but for how to work with me as an individual. I wrote one of those once. It did not get through and approved by HR. I'm just saying. But there are examples that are out there on the internet that talk about that kind of stuff, where it's like, I prefer this form of communication versus this form of communication. I have focus hours between this time of day. I'm on this time zone. You essentially, any pet peeve you've got, you put it down there. And then you send them that document that is, here's to get to work with me the best way. Here, read this, it'll explain it all for you. And you can tweak the language of that to make it customer friendly. And if your employer is okay with it, you can share that with them. It's a very nice way to do it. And then the other way is I just remove that. If the one that drives me nuts right now at work is I have a few people that contact me directly for the project I'm on, where they're actually supposed to go through a ticketing system for SOW workload tracking purposes. And so I just have automated responses that I reply that are essentially copy-paste snippets out of OneNote that are well-structured, friendly for the work environment, ways of saying, hey, don't ask this here, ask this there. Or, hey, can you send that to me as an email so I don't lose it? That kind of a thing. And it just redirects them back to the way you prefer to have it of, hey, I keep my to-do list as my inbox in my Outlook. Can you send this to me as an email so I don't forget to do the thing you want? It's important. I don't want to lose it. And if you frame it that way, they learn over time to just not do it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Do we have any from online?
We don't have any online. I just wanted to make a comment myself, just to totally back up what Denny said. Awesome presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've been struggling with my head for literally my entire life, and it's
Most of us are.
Only in the last couple of years that I've started to finally realize what I need to be doing about it, and I got tips out of this, and the one that really spoke to me is understand yourself. I have no idea.
Yeah. It takes a lot of time, and you got to have those reflection moments to be able to look back and find those moments where it's, hey, this didn't work for everybody else. It worked for me, but not everybody else. I had a team lead once that I'd get overly zealous in review meetings and stuff like that. for stuff. Ever want to see me freak out? Talk about a branching structure that's not root. And yeah, he would tap the back of his wrist to tell me, hey, take a chill pill, calm down, don't speak for 5 minutes in this meeting, and do it. Quite frequently, he would walk up and do it right in front of my face because I couldn't pick up on the subtle cue at that moment. So if you can find somebody you trust to give you those moments of, hey, you might want to think about this moment, very a good way to find that know about yourself moments.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I do have a question. There are so many awesome references in your slides. Can we find, if not the slides, can we find the resources online?
QR code to the PDFs of the slides with active links in it. I highly suggest the Brene Brown video. It is life-altering, and the audiobook of Unmasking Autism. Masking is a term that's quite frequently used for putting on that facade of being neurotypical and building that burnout. Being an iconoclast, going back to this morning's keynote, being that person that's willing to fight the fear and all that. So very good resources on how to unmask that.
Yeah, thank you. I just did a very bad thing as a host there. It's like, no, I had to get that so that I can look it up later. Yes. So we don't have any more online. Do we have any more questions in the room? Oh, yes, we have one more. 2 seconds.
So you mentioned about the different communication styles, so maybe there has been some memorable miscommunication case from your
one. I was working for a company at the time that did credit card processing for a major retailer in the United States. I'm not going to say which one. We sent 215,000 emails in 15 minutes to 1,000 people. Because me and the other autistic engineer on the team went and fixed a stored procedure in production. yeah, that was a good day. We were told to fix the bug. We went and fixed the bug. They didn't tell us to fix the bug and, follow normal procedures. They said it was a production outage, go fix it. So there's that one. Quite frequently, my common one is I'm passionate about a subject being spoken about. YAML is a superset of JavaScript or Java JSON notation, and a lot of people don't know that, so they properly format stuff. Gets me going. So I've been in several meetings where that's been a subject of debate. So those are common scenarios. The ones that really get me are humor in text communications like Teams or Slack or channel without some way of knowing that that's a joke. So I'm a fan of emojis in things because that's a way of adding context to the language being spoken and a way of confirming I received something without actually having to say something. So I'm a huge fan of clicking the thumbs up button in Teams. So common ways there. Also, I get quite frequently as being a trans woman, and then you hear this voice on a meeting with no video. I get quite frequently, who's Elizabeth on the call? Those are fun calls.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any more questions in the room? In which case, I would like to say yet again, thank you very much for that amazing talk full of fantastic, useful things that we can take away and look at immediately. And to everybody else, thank you so much for being here. We have a 10-minute break now. Please don't forget to vote on your way out. And as Dylan was saying this morning in the keynote, please remember that we have the bingo card on our name tags. Please use it. This really isn't possible without sponsors, so we do have to be nice to them. Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
See you later.
I'm saving the coral reefs using underwater AI.
I'm helping food get to those in need, fast.